Welcome, my friends, to Inside the Minds of Authors. I'm DC Gomez, and I'm thrilled you're joining me today for a fun conversation with a passionate author. We're kicking off the program, like it's our tradition, with a short reading from the feature book. I hope you guys enjoy it. Let's get started.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jacqueline Smith, and today I'm going to be reading a short story from my new collection, Secondhand. The story is called Feast of Fortune. Travelers passing through the small town of Fortune, Texas, often describe it as a community lost in time. I tend to disagree. Fortune isn't lost in time, it's simply frozen. While the world beyond the railroad tracks that border Fortune has evolved over the years, advancing new technologies, designing new buildings, and welcoming new faces, our town and its 3,007 residents have stayed very much the same. That's why, according to the older generations, the undead love it here. Why they like to stop in every now and then. Because Fortune reminds them of times gone by. I never believed in their silly superstitions. Not even after Nicolette Lowry moved to town. She arrived one dreary autumn day, shortly after my 28th birthday. We were used to visitors passing through Fortune, but very few ever stuck around longer than a few hours. Nicolette, however, decided to stay. No one knew where she'd come from, and no one actually witnessed her arrival. She simply appeared, strolling around the park with the cool evening fog. She dressed in a casually elegant fashion, black dresses and silvery cashmere scarves. And with her dark brown hair and sharp, striking features, she was easily the most beautiful creature anyone in Fortune had ever seen. And while several young people were intrigued by the strange newcomer, all of the older adults in town were automatically wary. I've seen her kind before. Harv Larson, the owner of the oldest diner in town, huffed and gruffed to anyone who would listen. I was just a kid, 12, maybe 13, and two of them just showed up out of the blue, made themselves at home down at the Stonebriar Inn. And at the time, my friends and me didn't really know what to make of them. We were just kids after all. But all the grown-ups recognized them for what they were immediately. They warned us to stay away. Others were eager to corroborate his story. I remember them, Helen Carruth declared, her voice trembling. They were so lovely. I thought they must be royalty. But my mother told me that they were demons, children of hell itself. You kids mark my words. That young lady is dangerous. Of course, as anyone who's ever been young before can probably imagine, their words of warning only made us more curious. They also stirred up feelings of empathy and pity. After all, this young woman's only crime was showing up unannounced, and yet the entire town of Fortune had made up their minds to shun her. Not even our priests were welcoming. I'm sure you've all encountered, or at least heard about our newest resident here in Fortune. Her name is Nicolette Lowry. She has dark hair, gray eyes, and she claims to be 20 years old. Reverend Silas Masters preached to a packed congregation one of the first Sundays after Nicolette's arrival. Now, I'm sure to most outsiders, and even a few of our own young people, Miss Lowry seems like a nice, ordinary, exceptionally lovely young woman. But those of us who call Fortune home, and have done so for decades, know how to recognize the characteristics of the unholy. Their dark beauty, their desolate nature, their aversion to sunlight and music and all things good and pure. These creatures possess the ability to control the elements, to communicate with beasts, and to control your very thoughts. I encourage each and every one of you to be extremely vigilant and exercise an abundance of caution when it comes to Miss Lowry. His words were shocking and disheartening, but I couldn't pay them mind for long. I had my own ghosts to grapple with.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Inside the Minds of Authors. I am so excited you guys are joining us today. I have a dear friend, fabulous author, and absolutely delight joining us today. But before we get started, just some quick reminders, everyone. If you're new to the podcast, make sure to subscribe. You don't want to miss a single episode. We're back on regular season, Monday nights with new authors, new books, and all the fun world that you guys don't want to miss. Make sure to subscribe. And while you're at it, give us a review, share it with a friend. We're always better when we're growing together. So make sure to spread the word. But let's get started. Hello, Miss Jackie. How are you?
I'm fantastic. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing delightful. So I had this moment, probably a dream. You know how people say, I had a dream and I wrote a book? Mine don't
Yes.
do that. I never had those dreams. But it was more like, you need to call Jackie and see if she wants to be on the podcast. I was like, ooh. And then I had to notice that, hey, you had a new book out. I was like, this is perfect timing.
It
So
really is.
I need to know what we're going to discuss. I want to know all about it. Let's start with this collection. What is it a collection about? Is there a full story coming up after this vampire in this neighborhood? Because I want to know. So tell us.
Well, Secondhand is my second short story collection. My first is called Broken Mirror. What's funny is it doesn't do as well online, but it does really well in person at Comic Cons, at book events. So I thought, okay, I'm going to put another out. But I really had no ideas for stories until I visited Reno. We stopped in at Virginia City and visited the Old Washoe Club, which is very haunted. And I thought, oh, I need to write a short story about this. And then the other short stories just kind of kept coming. And Feast of Fortune actually started out. I've had this idea floating around in my head since college, but it's evolved so much over the years. It started out as a story that was set a couple centuries ago because I wanted to write a real vampire novel, kind of almost like Interview with the Vampire. And I realized, oh, I'm not smart enough for that at all. And so it's evolved into what became Beast of Fortune.
It does have a very flair to True Blood. The very first book, once you started writing, I was like, oh, I'm reminiscing of Charlene Harris right now. Love the opening. Definitely gives you automatic vampire vibes.
Thank you.
How many short stories do you have in this collection?
There are 7 in total. 4 of them are slightly spookier. So we have ghosts, we have the vampires, we have aliens, and then 3 of them are more lighthearted rom-coms, like a teenage romance set at the Halloween store, a baking show because I absolutely love, like, Halloween baking shows.
Me too.
Right? Right. So I was really excited to work on that one. And that one ended up being the first rom-com I've ever written from the guy's perspective, which was a challenge because I don't think like a guy.
I need to know, how do you switch between these different stories, these different genres? Does your mind need to finish a project, or do you just go like, yeah, I can do anything? How does that work for you?
Well, my friends have always told me I'm really good at compartmentalizing, and I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. But no, the 2 stories I'm working on now, I keep switching back and forth. One of them is a contemporary rom-com, and another is actually a fairy tale retelling. It's kinda like watching a movie in my head. I can just turn off the one movie that I'm watching, and I'll turn on the other one when I'm switching manuscripts.
I love it. I'm normally focused on one and then
Mhm.
switching over. It's like, yeah, we need to finish this baby, or else I get lost in my own thoughts. So the fact that you can switch back and forth. You are both author as well as your own publisher. You do covers, you do it all. How did that happen? How did you decide, you know what? I want to play in everything?
The honest to goodness answer is that I stopped being able to afford, like, a cover designer, so I decided to learn how to do it myself. I also love photography. I have a master's degree in the creative arts in aesthetic studies. I have so many pictures that I've taken myself. I thought, "Well, why shouldn't I learn to design my own covers?" And that way I don't have to rely on other people for deadlines. I save a lot of money doing it all myself. And I'll admit, I'm a little bit of a control freak. I really like my covers to look the way that I want them to look. And that goes for why I decided to independently publish as well. I really like having control over my own stories.
You have a flow for your work and everything works really well with each other. So I love the fact that you incorporated your photos to your passions and everything into your book because it flows really. So I enjoy that. How do you pick topics to write about? Because you have probably some of the most amazing stories and quirky ways of finding them. Like you're doing what? And your titles are always hysterical. Like, okay, how does that come out?
Thank you so much. So, with the one title that always catches people's attention is trashy romance novel. And I came up with that because basically I was told I would never make money unless I wrote a trashy romance novel. So I said, okay, let's do it. If you've read trashy romance novel, it's definitely a novel within a novel. So the girl writes a trashy romance novel, and there are snippets of that novel in the book. I would love to one day be smart enough to write that actual series. I was a lot younger when I did write it, and at the time, I was like, "This is too intimidating. I can't do this." So I wrote a story about the girl who could write that story. I was like, "What do I call this?" "Oh, I'm just gonna call it trashy romance novel." So that's kinda how that came to be, and then I think the other book that is kind of funny is just Boy Band. That came about because I had written nothing but ghost stories, and then one night I was watching One Direction music videos, and I thought, "Oh, they're cute. They'd be fun to hang out with." And so I started writing the story, like, that night, and I thought, "Well, what do I call this?" Boy band.
Your titles are definitely catchy and it makes you want to go like, what is this about? You go to tons of festival. How are the readers receiving these novels? Because I'm pretty sure everybody stops. I've been at conventions, people look at your books and stop and go like, I'm sorry, what? What is the reaction you get more?
I think most people are very let's see, they see cemetery tours and they think, "Oh, that sounds really cool." Of course, a lot of them think that it's about actual like, going around to actual cemeteries and writing about them, and I go, "No, I'm sorry, I wish I was that cool. No, this is just a fictional series." I don't think there's disappointment. But no, usually people still think it's pretty cool just because ghosts are cool. With Boy Band and Trashy Romance Novel, though, I definitely get a lot of laughter, which is what I'm going for. I enjoy making people laugh, and I appreciate it when they think I'm funny.
You're totally on it. So I love it. This new collection you have, where would you place it? What genre would you place it for people who are curious besides short story collection?
This is actually my sister's idea. I called it a creepy and cozy anthology. So I meant to get it out around Halloween, that ended up not happening, but thankfully, people are just as interested in spooky short stories in December and January as they were in October. So it's for anyone who really loves spooky season and cooler weather. Those first weeks of autumn when it's getting darker earlier and the leaves are starting to fall and the air is crisp. This collection is perfect for that time of year, or for anyone who loves that time of year.
And for anybody who enjoys short stories and a little bit of the supernatural, you get to have it all. So I love it. Dear, you've been writing literally for over a decade. What advice would you give an up and coming author who's going, "Oh, I want to tackle this"? You've seen so many changes in our industry. What would you tell them?
I would tell them that there is no one right way to write a story, and there's no one right way to get it out there, to get it published. You don't even have to write it down and put it in a book. If you want, you can do a podcast, you can do a YouTube channel, you can draw it. I'm working on a book right now, and I have an illustrator for a few of the characters in that book, and she's sending them to me, and they're amazing. There's so many mediums to get your story out there. And also don't get discouraged. The world is a much scarier place, I think, now than it was 10 years ago when I started writing. And that I think just means that we need your story now more than ever. So don't get discouraged. Don't let the world tell you it can't be done because it absolutely can.
That's such a great advice. And we do need words out. We need people to bring those worlds to life because I think we're getting lost in everyday affairs. And sometimes we need that magic. As you continue to write and create, what is your favorite part of this journey? Do you actually enjoy marketing?
No, marketing is hard. I have to force myself to TikTok at least once a week.
Better than I am.
But yeah, but you have this whole podcast. You're amazing.
I get to talk to fun people. It's a little different. I'm like, this is like low risk, super fun, easy peasy.
My favorite I love the writing process. The when you get a new idea and you actually get to get it down on paper, that's just so much fun. And to be honest, from 2022 to 2023, I went through a lot of losses, a lot of personal losses, and also I was living with undiagnosed thyroid disease. And so all of that kinda apparently messes with your brain a lot that I didn't realize. And I had a really, really hard time writing. I would write, but none of it was worth reading. It was just dribble. And for a whole year, I didn't write anything that I wanted to share with anyone. And since being able to grieve and also getting on some medication for the thyroid issue, I found that I finally have my spark back, and writing secondhand, I think really writing those 7 short stories really helped a lot with that because it reminded me, you do love this and you can write a story that you want to share with people.
I'm so glad you gave yourself permission to heal, to grieve, and just to give yourself that time. Because sometimes I think we tend to push through things that are not meant to be pushed. We're supposed to just slow it down.
Oh, and I was trying to push. When I told you I was working on the fairy tale retelling, it's gonna be 4 different stories based on the season, so spring, summer, fall, winter. And the spring one I've been trying to write since college. This is the project I've had in my head for over almost 2 decades now. I wrote so much of the spring one last year and I just read it. I'm like, this is not good. It's boring. Nothing happens. There's no point to it. And it can be very hard to acknowledge that I spent almost a year working on this and nothing salvageable. But that's also part of the process. I've done it before. The 3rd book in the Cemetery Tour series, I wrote almost the whole thing and realized, wow, nothing happens in this. It's bad. And I just threw it out.
It's hard when you commit so much time and effort to say, okay, I need to start over. And sometimes we work so hard for these words and we want to hold on to them for dear life. And sometimes you can let them go. It's okay.
This is kind of funny. My brain definitely decides to delete any first, second, third drafts because I remember reading once on Twitter, I think, and it was like, writers, how many drafts do you go through before you decide to publish? And my automatic answer was, oh, none. I always publish my first draft because it's perfect. And then I think, no, I've never had a first draft. My brain just decides not to acknowledge them anymore because the first, second, and third drafts are always so bad.
Okay. I think sometimes we tend to want to be perfect from the beginning. I think we all want to think it needs to be ready to publish instead of kind of like, it's okay. We work through this process and kind of find our rhythm in our cycle. So I love it. You've been mentioning different things you're working on. What are you working on? Because you have hinted about 4 different things. I'm like, and every time I want to pin you on something, then you say something else. I'm like, okay, now I'm lost. Like, what are we working on? Tell us.
I'm sorry. So I have the fairy tale retelling that I'm working on. I'm working on a new contemporary rom-com, which is a spin-off of the boy band series. So they're all going to be in the same universe. I'm working on Cemetery Tours 5, which, oh, after 2020 and watching all the death and destruction, and then after 2022 and all the personal losses, I just haven't been able to bring myself to write about death. But I'm finally getting back to where, yes, this is a fun story. This is a good story, and I can still write it. And then the 4th and last one is a Comic-Con romance because you and I, we spend so much time at Comic-Cons. I thought, you know what? There's got to be a story here somewhere.
It's more like drama. So, I don't know about rom com. There will be some drama going on.
You're
There's
not
some
wrong.
back. I don't know.
I have yet to find an actual romance at Comic-Con.
When you do, I would like to hear about it. It's like a good romance because it's one of those like, oh my god, what do we have going on? So yes,
We meet a lot of very fun, very interesting people in our line of work.
That's a really awesome way to put it. I'm really enjoying that. That's very politically correct. We also meet some amazing people that just make you cry. So I think we get them all. Like you get a little
Yeah.
bit. Somebody said we have the salt of the earth. I was like, my earth is kind of salty. That's how I'm feeling sometimes.
Yeah, yeah, no, I have definitely cried at Comic Cons, which is something I never thought I would say. But yes, that has definitely happened.
We have it all, and it's always so interesting. So we're talking about Comic Con. I need to know where can our listeners find you? Because you usually have a pretty packed schedule. Are you ready for this year? What has Miss Jackie got going on?
Yeah, let's do it. So, when we're recording this right now, it's January. I actually have a vampire weekend next weekend here in Dallas. Hopefully, if the weather cooperates, Miss Miracle Austin will be joining me. February, we have Waco Teen Book Fest. That's also Miss Miracle and a lovely couple, Tracy. They have put that on for the teens in Waco. So I'll be going to that, as well as Teen Book Fest by the Bay, which is one of my very favorites. I know we both love Teen Book Fest by the Bay very much. We have made our pilgrimage to Selena every single year that we've gone.
It's a beautiful thing.
It is.
Absolutely.
It is. And then March, Permian Basin Comic Con, April, Hill Country Comic Con. And I think that's it for the immediate next few months.
You have an amazing schedule. So projects are coming, stories are in the works. You're going out to see people. I need to know, and I know our listeners, where can people find you? Where they can learn more about the fabulous Miss Jackie, where they can get a lot of information. Tell us.
Thank you. You can find me on Facebook, you can find me on Instagram, and you can find me on Twitter. If you follow me on Twitter, all you're going to see is me posting about BTS because I love them. You can also find me on TikTok, but prepare to be disappointed.
Do you have a website for us as well? Because I know you do. I'm like, you have a
I do. Yes. Website is www.windtrailpublishing.com. Oh, we're also on YouTube now.
I like it. All right, dear. We're going to jump to our lightning round. Are you ready?
Let's do it.
I am hoping I haven't asked you these questions before, but if I have, pretend that you don't remember, and it'll be great.
I honestly don't, so you're good.
Yes. Or sour. Pepsi or Coke?
Neither. I don't like soda.
Really?
I do not like soda. The carbonation hurts.
Not bad. Good for you. Breakfast or dinner?
Dinner.
Beach or lake?
Beach.
Ebooks or print?
Oh, I always prefer print, but as an author, ebooks are great too.
That makes two of us. Here's a little different. Let me see how you do with this one. If you could have any superpower, what would you pick?
Ooh, I honestly think either flying or teleportation, just because I love to travel and I love to see new places, but I do not like to fly. Even though I just said I would pick flying, I meant like because I would have control over if I flew. I wouldn't be in an airplane. I don't like airplanes.
So with you, but I think I would like both of those due to like the convenience and the money.
Yes. Oh,
Just because.
yes. That too.
Yes, because it's expensive to fly. And
It is expensive.
here it has been, like usual, a pleasure, and I can chat with you forever. But tell me, do you have any closing remarks? Anything you need to tell us before we jumped off?
Just thank you so much for having me. I love you so much, and I cannot wait for the next event that we get to hang out at because I miss you.
I'm totally missing. So I'm hoping we can coordinate the stars and the schedules, but we'll see. Everything has a plan. To our listeners, go ahead and give the fabulous Miss Jacqueline Smith a shout out. Check out the website, check out the books, pick up this collection. Dear, thank you so much for joining us. It has been such an amazing pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much. I love you.
Love you, love you. Listeners, go ahead and check us out. If you're not subscribed to the podcast, make sure you do. We're available in all your major podcasting stations. We'll be back next week with another fabulous author. Bye, guys.